The Arnold Palmer Invitational coming up this weekend at Bay Hill, which means we've got a really nice field, including Jon Rahm and Rory McIlroy at the top. Rahm has been dominant for months now. McIlroy surging, which sets up kind of an interesting dynamic here where it may be kind of those two against the world. We're going to break down our thoughts on Rahm, McIlroy, roster construction, and just the course in the field in general to get you set for some PGA DFS this week over on FanDuel. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com. Joined here, as always, by Brandon Gadula. He is the managing editor of numberFire.com. Brandon, got a pretty big event coming up this week, the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Pretty nice field as well. How you doing today?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm just taking a little umbrage, perhaps, with the comment that Jon Rahm's golfing well, because I'd like to read you his finishes in 2022, and you tell me if Jon Rahm is toast. 2nd, 14th, 3rd, 10th, 21st. You want to tell me that guy's in good form?
I heard 21st, therefore he can't be in good form. That's the logic to me.
Everyone,
how many wins? Does he have how many? What's his TWTW rating? The will to win. You know, where is he there? Give me that stat.
Where has he on the win juice scale?
Yeah,
his ball striking. His ball striking's been so good, and his short game has just sort of like,
you're citing the wrong stats. TWTW or GTFO.
Oh man, Jon Rahm should have like 1 million wins. So,
I mean, he probably will. So I'm not.
It's hard to win. It's hard to win, as Shane Lowry found out this week.
It got
stolen.
Why are we doing this right now? Like,
yeah, I know.
I'm in a good mood to open the day. Shane Lowry was my win pick last week, which means I have now come very, very close to 2 separate wins this year because Cantlay lost in a playoff, and then Lowry had a lead for a decent amount Saturday, and then Sepp Straka is like, no, we're not doing this here, and I feel like you did that to set me off in the terms of like, not in like anger me, but like throw me off my vision for this podcast so that you can take advantage of me in the Pablo hat.
I had a Lowry outright. I was hoping for it.
Yeah, but do you care more about your money or my pride in our win picks?
The chance of the chance of you having to buy me a hat. Or being able to buy
a hat by yourself.
Dozens of
but
hats.
Like, it's about pride. Like, your financials are not publicly disclosed unless you're like I don't know if like, are you on the NAS? I don't know, whatever. Your financials are not publicly disclosed. Our win picks are. And like, if I get the Shane Lowry outright, I'm annoying you about that forever. So truly, what's the monetary value of that? Pretty high.
I wanted him to win, and the rain just came down, and Sepp Straka came down on it. It was extra bad because it was Sepp Straka, who's someone that we talk about a good bit, and
I was not on him last week. So
it
was a true delight. Anyway, we're going to break down the Arnold Palmer Invitational, get you set for this week's event at Bay Hill Club and Lodge, and let you know all you need to know for this week. But first, a quick reminder to make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, you name it. You can find us there just by searching for the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. And while you're there, if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. Of course, we have NBA, NHL podcast via Tom Vecchio, Austin Swain with UFC. I've got NASCAR each Friday as well. So lots of stuff here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Let's dive in now to the Arnold Palmer Invitational at Bay Hill Club and Lodge. It is 7,466 yards and a par 72. And a pretty big factor in looking back at recent events has been wind. It has led to tough scoring conditions in recent years, and it does look like the wind will play a factor again this weekend. It's going to sit around 15 miles per hour for much of the weekend, and then also on Friday afternoon. So wind is in play once again this week. So if you're looking at scoring conditions, I would put more weight on the recent years where wind has also been a little bit nasty for those. There are 120 golfers in the field. The top 65 plus ties will make the cut after the first 2 rounds. So wind is a factor this week. We've seen that in the past, Brandon. What stands out to you in terms of stats to emphasize for this week at Bay Hill?
Yeah, so at that yardage, it's long even for a par 72. It's about 90, 100 yards longer than your average par 72 on the PGA Tour. That does come with large greens, 7,500 square feet, which is about 125% of the average in my database, which is around 6,000. And those greens are Bermuda. So that's kind of the baseline stuff, just to add to the info, the course info here. But the winning scores at this event have sort of gone up and down, as you mentioned, with some wind. 11 under, 4 under, 12 under, 18 under, 11 under. But realistically, we're not looking at a birdie fest. We're looking at a tougher track, tougher setup, and that generally should shed some of the weaker golfers from the bottom of this field who are able to contend. You can maybe point to last week where the scoring was a tough and Sepp Straka won, but Shane Lowry was up there. Daniel Berger pretty much almost ran away with that thing, and that field was not nearly as strong as this one. So just keep that in mind with your value plays. I don't want to call this like a major-esque field because we said that for the Genesis too, but it's a good field overall, and you kind of want to keep that in mind. But as for the course itself, it makes sense that with a long par 72, driving distance pops is more important. I'm assuming you found that too, but driving accuracy also is sort of important. So I'm going to roll that up into strokes gained off the tee for this week, because if you take a more granular look at where the distance comes from, a lot of it is from long par threes. So it's not necessarily about just having driver in your hand. 3 of those 4 par threes are 215 yards or longer, the PGA average being around 197 yards. But there are some short to average par fives in terms of distance. So longer hitters can score well on the par fives. You're going to need to do that. Get an eagle chance or two, some birdie looks on those par fives. But again, distance, you don't hit your driver. The longest drivers hit their irons longer as well. So I mean, distance for those long par threes, I think, is going to be key. But again, strokes gained off the tee for me is going to be key. Approach is going to be key for me. And overall, if you look at how this course plays, it's pretty easy to putt here, all things considered. And if you look back at leaderboards, it's often the guys who gain strokes off the tee and with approach. So honestly, I'm always putting ball striking toward the top of the list. This week, I think I might go heavier than almost ever before and just try to find guys who really stripe it, who can get themselves some chances to make birdies wherever they exist, but also guys who can get up and down. So my key stats for this week: strokes gained approach as always, strokes gained off the tee, strokes gained around the green, bogey avoidance, and a little bit of course history sprinkled in, because this is an invite only. With the wind you mentioned, you can look at maybe wind splits, but if you've played here enough, you've played in these conditions. So I think that course history has a little bit more appeal this week than it does most weeks on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, so I want to go back to what you were talking about with the distance versus off the tee in terms of like accuracy mattering. If you go back to last year, I just look at the top 15 finishers where they ranked for the full season in different driving stats. So I have distance, accuracy off the tee, and good drive rate. So last year, the median ranking for the top 15 golfers in driving distance for the full season was 58.5, accuracy 102.5, good drive rate 116. Strokes gained off the tee was 37th. So higher than it is at like most courses, in part because it was like a good field. Like that's going to play a role in there for sure. But like if you look at it relative to distance, I think that does stand out, because you had guys like Matt Fitzpatrick, who is good off the tee but not long. He was in that top 15. You have Keegan Bradley, who is like better than he is long. Chris Kirk is similar in that respect. And then Corey Connors finished really well. Same kind of thing, where they're not like the longest guys, but they're pretty good in general off the tee. So I think that's why, to me, it was pretty easy actually to decide to go with strokes gained off the tee versus distance. And having the anecdotal stuff you talked about with the longer par threes, I think really helps solidify that as being the correct route for me.
Yeah, and one thing, I don't know, maybe I just sort of hear this because I've been listening for it a lot, but there's a difference between not being a long hitter and like being actively and like prohibitively short. And a lot of those guys you named, they're
Like,
maybe not
it's
the
Jim
longest hit.
Furyk versus Matt Fitzpatrick. Like, there's a difference.
Yeah, like Jordan Spieth's always the one that comes to mind. He's not a short hitter. He's just sort of average, maybe a little bit above, maybe a little bit below, depending. But yeah, like if you can gain strokes off the tee, if you're long enough and you're accurate, like that works. So Corey Connors, a name we'll probably hear later on.
We'll be talking about him in the current form section, not for good reasons. We'll talk about him there for sure. We'll get to that and course history in just 1 second. But first, basketball fans, this Thursday is March 3rd, which can only mean one thing. It's Mountain Dew's Super Trade Day being back. That is right. FanDuel and Mountain Dew have once again teamed up to bring you the 2022 Mountain Dew Super Trade Day daily fantasy contests and sportsbook offerings. All you have to do is head over to FanDuel and look for the Mountain Dew Super Trade Day contest or markets to get in on the action. Whether it's FanDuel's 3-point challenge or FanDuel Sportsbook's enhanced odds on 3-point props, there is something for everyone. For more details, go to FanDuel.com. Look for the 2022 Mountain Dew Super Trade Day offerings today. Again, Super Trade Day coming up on Thursday this week. Let's dive into past history here at Bay Hill. And headliner there is Rory McIlroy. And I think that if we're looking at this from a form perspective, McIlroy is very interesting, but it's hard to be quite on Rahm's level because he's been so good for so long. However, you mentioned that course history may matter a bit more because there's wind, stuff like that. Of course, knowledge, I should say, maybe matters more. Rahm doesn't have that at Bay Hill. McIlroy does, and it's very good. So let's run through Rory McIlroy's history at Bay Hill, and then let's talk about him and Rahm together and how we're viewing them in this field this week.
So Rory won here in 2018. He has 5 straight top 10s. He is 7 for 7 in terms of made cuts, with just one finish worse than 11th when he finished 27th. That is phenomenal. That's about as good of course result as you could find it for any golfer at any course. And as I mentioned already, I'm leaning toward and already have been like ramping up ball striking extra this week. So that's not going to exactly get me to go away from Rory, who ranks 5th in the field in my adjusted strokes gained ball striking numbers over the past year, which account for not only field strength, but recency as well. His current form's also good for what's there. 12th in Abu Dhabi, 3rd in Dubai, then January was 10th at the Genesis. Now, it is worth noting that McIlroy's past 2 results have been aided by putting, but his putting's trending up, and Rory's not the best putter, but he's also not generally awful. So that's one thing to keep in mind there. And it's not like he was only putting his way to those good results. So honestly, I know you've hopped on the Rory train. You're there. I was a little bit slower to get there. I'm there this week, but you wanted to talk about Rory versus Jon Rahm. It's a very good conversation this week. And frankly, whenever I had the option of Rahm versus anybody else for like the past year, it's been Rahm by a mile. Cantlay kind of slid into that a couple weeks ago, but I think it's a little bit of a conversation this week. So talk to me about your first thoughts on Jon Rahm at 12,100 on FanDuel and Rory McIlroy at 11,900.
I think that the fact that it's a conversation is an acknowledgement of how good Rory has been and the fact that he's like really good at this course. So I think that in itself is like giving a head nod to Rory, like, okay, like we see you. But to me, and this could be wrong, but I want to go back to what you said in the open where you're talking about, hey, Jon Rahm not getting these finishes. And I know you were being sarcastic, but like, so I have to do, I have to do these like FanDuel hurry up videos. And like, I have Jon Rahm as my top pick there. And I'm guessing if that gets tweeted out, people will be like, Rahm's not paying off. I think people are gonna be mad about like, I think that they're not going to see the return on investment that they expect from Rahm. And I think that's going to potentially lead, despite the fact that Rahm is the betting favorite, despite he has a high salary, I think that like, we're going to see lower roster rates than expected on Jon Rahm. And that's partly why I am inclined to like take a look at McIlroy here, look at Rahm this week, because I feel like he's still the better play straight up. Like the long form history or the long form is better. I care about bogey avoidance this week, given how tough the tough the field is, how tough the course is, given the wind, stuff like that. Rahm leads the field in bogey avoidance the past 50 rounds, according to Fantasy National. Obviously, McIlroy's ball striking is good, but so is Rahm's. So I'm actually, if I continue to get the read or the vibe that Rahm is going to be less popular than he should, which is kind of my assumption right now, I'm probably going Rahm for cash games and for tournaments with Rory. I still like Rory, and I feel like I'd want to start most of my lineups with one of those two guys. But I think if I'm choosing one for both formats, I'm probably going to go Rahm there.
I mean, yeah, we don't really have to like. I know that this is a conversation we're having, but I don't think you need to walk on eggshells to say that you like John Rahm this week. And I'm not saying like you're pretending like nobody likes Rahm or nobody's going to play Rahm.
No, I'm saying he'll be 30% when he should be 40%.
Right. It is still impossible to state how good John Rahm is relative to the rest of this field. I have him, and I should have looked this up. I have him. What's this? Like 0.65 shots per round better with all the adjustments than Rory, who I kind of manually bumped up just a tinge
Sure.
for the course history, which I don't really bake in because I don't think it's very predictive generally this week.
Your baseline assumption that it's not being like too much is probably right.
Give me a year sample of adjusted form that accounts for recency rather than what someone did 4 years ago and count that the same as how they're golfing now. I'll take that. But yeah, like it's impossible to state how good Rahm has been. That's not really reflected in the win odds because for me, Rory is really overvalued from a betting standpoint at 13 to 1 on FanDuel Sportsbook. Rahm's 8.5 to 1 now. But my win simulations have Rahm at 11% likely to win and Rory at 4.4% likely to win. As much as I say that it's pretty close from a daily fantasy standpoint, I would rather have John Rahm as a bet, even at those shorter odds, and I'd rather play Rahm.
Yeah.
That being said, I think Rory is a tier above everyone else. And my only fear with that is I think other people will think the same thing because Rory at Bay Hill makes a lot of sense. But honestly, Rory's not that far ahead in all my spreadsheets than like Victor Hovland or Scotty Scheffler. But if I were really thinking about this, it's going to be hard to click Hovland or Scheffler over Rory very frequently at a course where Rory's been so good and with Rory in good form. So I kind of have some FOMO with Rory that's probably a little bit unfounded. So I'm higher on Rahm than I would think consensus would be. I'm probably still lower on Rory than consensus would be, but I'm also higher on Rory than all my data says I probably should be anyway.
Right. I think that for me, I agree where the gap between him and Hovland and Scheffler is decent. And I think that's why I'd want, again, to start with either Rahm or McIlroy in most of my lineups, just because I do think that they're above the rest of the field. What? You look at FanShare?
Yeah.
Because I did too, and Rahm is very low, which is partly fueling why I think that I still think he'll be 30% roster, but not 40%.
Sure. I mean, we're up to 17 tags for the leader, so it's not for lack of tags overall.
Yeah, that's what I said. I think sentiment has shifted against him.
I'll just say I can say this: John Rahm has one more tag than Bryson, who withdrew. So
over under 30% roster rate for Rahm in like the primary, the Eagle on FanDuel.
I'm getting like 29 vibes, so I'm gonna say
I would lean under, but it's very different than usual. So
yeah,
I don't know. I think that's advantageous. I don't have to do as much to get overweight on him. Cool. Let's take advantage of that.
Again, I have Rahm like almost 3 times as likely to win than Rory. So
yeah, he's pretty good. So you mentioned there is someone on FanShare with 17 tags. Let's talk about him. Matt Fitzpatrick, our boy. Apparently a lot of people are talking about Fitzpatrick right now. He's golfing well. He has plus history at Bay Hill, which makes his the sentiment there less shocking. The salary at 11.2 less shocking. Fitzpatrick has played at Bay Hill 7 times, which is weird because he's very young. But he has top 10s, or he has 3 top 10s. all of which have come the past 3 years. Last year was almost fully fueled by putting, but he gained at least 7 strokes tee to green in both 2019 and 2020. And like, it's not a shock to see Matt Fitzpatrick go nuts on the greens. He's very good in Bermuda. So it's within his range of outcomes to have a spike week there for sure. Fitzpatrick had top 10 finishes at the Waste Management and at Pebble Beach. He seems to do well in these tougher courses where he can grind out pars. So do you think Matt Fitzpatrick is worth the high salary? And how does your sentiment change knowing that he'll likely be very popular this week?
Yeah, I mean, look, you can kind of view tougher tracks one of two ways where like guys can get knocked around easily or the best of the best will separate. And I'm usually more in the camp of the latter, but not to the point that I will eat so much chalk whenever we have viable alternatives. And I think that we have viable alternatives because, again, this field is quite good. And I love Matt Fitzpatrick overall, but I have Sungjae Im at 11-3. I have Will Zalatoris at 11-1. I got Sam Bermuda Burns at 10-7, whose form's not very good, but like I have ways to differentiate. I mean, we can all forget about Hideki very easily, it seems like. He's 11-6. So I'm not saying it's like the same exact salary, but I would honestly, out of Sungjae Im, Will Zalatoris, and Matt Fitzpatrick, rank, because they're within $100 of Fitz. I would rank Fitz third, I think.
I would too. I would go. So I initially had Zalatoris one. I might go Sungjae.
So I have Sungjae. I love Sungjae this week. I think we want to kind of joke about the ROM fatigue. I think we have that with Sungjae, who, this is sort of Sungjae's time. He's on Bermuda. The salary is a little bit up. He's at the top of that tier because we do have a tier break from Hideki at 11-6 to Sungjae at 11-3. I think people might just be all right going to Fitz or Zalatoris, or I feel like Leishman is someone who I'm always lower on than the public as well. So
yeah.
Not
everyone in that range can be popular. They're all getting buzz right now, but not everyone can be there. And I think that if someone slips through the cracks, it's more likely to be Sungjae than Zalatoris and Fitz, given the way things are trending.
Yeah, and I've said this already, but like that's kind of how you play majors. Is like you have it, just play the guy who's going to be less rostered, and if you like what you see enough and it's close.
I like Sungjae a lot, so yeah, pretty easy discussion there. And we'll talk about Zalatoris later on as well, but I think that range is going to be getting pretty noteworthy for sure for this week. Let's move down to some lower salary guys. Starting out with Chris Kirk, $9,300. And Kirk is someone who I tend to look at every week. I tend to talk myself out of him fairly often when doing so. What have you seen with Kirk in the past at Bay Hill?
So he's been lingering lately. It's noteworthy because he's played well here. His salary's $9,300, which is, I guess, where it probably should be, but I thought maybe it would be a little bit higher, and I wouldn't be surprised either. But since 2016, Kirk's finished 12th, cut 13th, 15th, and 8th at Bay Hill. That's recent form. That's just about as good as anyone's, honestly, at this course. If you throw that into the hyper recent form that stands out, I think that this is going to be a name you hear plenty. Kirk finished 14th at the WM Phoenix Open, not the Waste Management. I was T7.
Oh, wait, really? Did they change it?
Yeah, where have you been?
Is the company not called Waste Management anymore?
That whole week, it was the WM Phoenix Open.
But I always call it the way because, like, I don't.
I know. We all still do. I'm trying to learn.
Did they change the company name? They don't want the word waste in their company name,
buddy. I don't know.
Waste management.
I'm just telling you, it's
WM.com. My WM login.
Not Jim's going to pay his garbage bill live on air.
Doing business as WM. Wow. I don't pay garbage bills. Come on. Do you have to pay for garbage? Is that a thing?
Yeah.
I've lived in an apartment for like the past decade and a half, so I have no idea how things work in the real world.
Okay. Well, let's talk about Chris Kirk, who's not garbage because he's been golfing really well. T14 at the WM Phoenix Open, T7 at Honda last week, Did so with all 4 strokes gained categories being positive in those. Did have 4.8 strokes from around the green play last week, which that ain't bankable. The ball striking has actually been just sort of okay. However, Kirk's long-term baseline is that of a good ball striker. And I think that he's probably going to end up a little bit popular this week. I didn't see where he landed with the tags on FanShare, but did Kirk pop for you? Because he did for me from a course form and recent form perspective, but not necessarily from like a whole statistical modeling standpoint. So what are your thoughts on Chris Kirk?
So I think that he's like near the top of that range, but not at the top of it. So there are some other guys, because I think actually, and this is counter to what we usually see on FanDuel, the mid to low 9,000 range is kind of good this week, I think at least, because we talked about Corey Connors. He's 96. Christian Bezadenhout is 95. Seamus Power, who I adore, is 95. Shocker. Got Kirk at 93. Luke List, 92. And then some guys like right below 9,000 who are pretty good too. So to say that Kirk is not at the top of my tier there is not an indictment of him. It's an endorsement of the rest of that tier. It's a pretty good tier, I think. Do you disagree?
No, I agree. I did not realize Patrick Reed was 92 and also 120 to 1 to win.
Yeah.
That's it's been quite the fall lately.
Yeah.
But yeah, otherwise, if you kick out Patrick Reed from the 9,200 discussion, I think that's a good range. I mean, I liked him as a top 10 last week. So I mean,
it was a market, like a market inefficiency. I think
it was very generous odds, which I'm sure I'll get again, and I'll probably bet again. And
sure. Also, if we do WMPO, is that like a WAPO thing, like a Washington Post thing where you go WUMPO? Like, is that how you do this? Like, can I call it the WUMPO, or is that taking it too far?
I think you answered your own question with that one.
Yeah, I'm going to call it WUMPO. Thank you. I appreciate that. Another guy who's been getting some buzz this week is Keith Mitchell. So let's talk about him here. He's up there in tags as well. We talked Mitchell last week in the course history section, and he finished 9th. So he paid off. That is the buzz there. Mitchell has good history at the Arnold Palmer as well. He has played the event 3 times. He was 6th, 5th, and 43rd in those 3 events. He's gained at least 2.4 strokes off the tee in all 3 events. He also putted well here, which isn't some crazy surprise. He's not a plus putter on Bermuda, but it is his best surface of the 3. He also has been having more spike weeks on the greens recently than he's had for like his whole career. And that does include gaining 4.7 strokes putting last week. So the 9th place finish aided by putting, but he also gained an approach for the 5th time in the past 6 events. That's not typically his strength. So Mitchell can stroke it. We know that for sure. He's 10-2. Are you back in on Keith Mitchell again this week?
Yes. I think he's going to fit a little bit more of a balanced build if I can get sort of Rahm, maybe Sungjae, Mitchell. I think I'd be cool with as like a top 3, see what that leaves me with, which I could do, right now. And if I were better,
91.5 if you go Rahm and Sungjae. If you lop in Mitchell, it's 88. I do like the high 8,000 range, but I think I probably will only have Rahm, Sungjae, and then dip, I think.
Yeah. But I mean, so in that 10,000 range, we got Sam Burns, Paul Casey, whose odds have shifted in a positive sense for him. He popped for me, but it's kind of got some talking about fatigue here. But Billy Horschel,
it's like 6 years of fatigue.
Yeah. Horschel, Mitchell, Max Homa. I think I could probably, if I offset Rahm's salary with like one value guy and tried to get up to that 10,000 range, that's appealing to me.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll end up going that route, but I think that I like Mitchell enough. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. It's like I like Mitchell in that range enough to consider building around it a little bit, because I think that the drop off from those guys to the low 9,000s is pretty substantial.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's probably right, especially given how good like the high-ish 10,000 range is. Like I think Tyrrell Hatton's pretty solid personally. I don't know if you're on board with that, but I like Burns despite what he's done to me. But if you go Rahm, Burns, Mitchell, that's 9,000 left per golfer. And then if you go like if you put in a Hoagie or who's the other value guy I like a lot this week? Lonto is 88. If you do like that, then you're back in that like decent low 9,000 range. So I could see that. I think that I'd be more into a Rom and then two guys in the 10,000 range than a Rom Sungjae 10,000 range. So it's kind of like two routes for roster construction for me. Rom plus Sungjae plus dip, or Rom plus two guys in the 10,000 range and then dip.
I like how Sungjae's now your guy this week as well.
I don't know, man. I don't know what I was doing yesterday. Like I talked myself out of Sungjae because I had his name written down in my player picks and I erased it. Yeah. So I don't know. Whatever. I'm back. I'm back. But yes, I think Mitchell validates that discussion, validates that type of approach because he's very good, because he can just crush it. And I also do think that like other guys in the high 9,000 range justify that type of approach too. Not just Mitchell, but some guys up there I would be into as well. Let's shift gears now and talk about current form, and not all positive current form. We'll talk about some guys who are struggling here and decide if we want to buy low on them. Let's start things off with Billy Horschel. Billy Horschel is $10,500. We talked about him quite a bit last week too. Where do you see Horschel grading out in that 10,000 range we were just discussing?
Pretty well. Probably not at the top or anything, but again, another reason that we could consider a balanced approach for this week, because honestly, outside of Rom's insane win odds, like it's fairly flat because it's a good field. I'm not saying that Billy Horschel is as likely as Rory to win. That's not what I'm saying. But at salary, it's you can justify a very balanced build for this week. And Horschel, I think, makes a lot of sense. He's playing a Florida track. He's going to play tough this week. We know he's been vocal about liking courses that play this way. Can't really cherry pick a whole lot of better spots to write the Billy Horschel narrative to want to play him. If you combine that with a recent form, it's very easy to talk yourself into Billy. In 2022, he's 5 for 5 on cuts made, 3 straight top 16 finishes, most recently at 11th at the Farmers, 6th at the WM Phoenix Open, 16th at Honda. And he actually lost strokes from the short game there. So you give me Billy Horschel with some ball striking? Like what's that going to look like? Horschel, despite the ostensible fit here, though, hasn't been particularly good at Bay Hill. He's made 8 of 9 cuts here, with the cut coming last year when the short game abandoned him, but like not a whole lot of great finishes. So that's the one concern, but you got to factor in the current form being pretty good right now. I think that he's in play, but again, he's not going to be someone that I prioritize over the rest of the 10,000 range, namely Mitchell, Burns, probably Casey as well.
Yeah.
I also like Russell Henley at 10,000 even. So Horschel, someone I would be totally fine putting in my lineups. Not going to rank him at the top, but another reason, again, just to sort of give that 10,000 range a long look.
Yeah, I think that he's just a victim of who else is there for me. And like I like most of the guys better. And it's the guys you listed. It's I do like Henley too, Mitchell, Casey. Burns is only for tournaments, but like, I think his appeal for tournaments is pretty high. But I think that it's kind of just weeds him out where although the ball striking may have been good last week, do you expect Horschel's ball striking to be a plus in this field at this event? Maybe not. So I'd rather bet on the ball striking to other guys personally. So for me, that's the main drawback of Horschel. I don't think he's a bad option, but he's not going to grade out above those other guys. So let's go back to the 11,000 range and talk about, let's wrap up our discussion of that range. Because we talked about Fitzpatrick before, we talked about Sungjae. Let's give the case for Zalatoris as being the top guy in the low 11,000 range at 11-1. Will Zalatoris finished 10th in his Arnold Palmer debut last year, golfing pretty well right now. Zalatoris has been to 3 events since January 1st. His finishes in those are 6th, 2nd, and 26th, despite losing strokes putting in all 3 events. That's because he gained 3.7, 7.9.
It's because he can't gain strokes putting.
Yeah.
I thought that's what you were going to say.
I mean, yeah, he can't. He's not allowed. But he's gained a lot on approach in those events, and that's kind of offset the issues. The off the tee play, not as stellar as usual for Zalatoris, but honestly, that might be a plus because like we know how good his upside is there, and like I don't expect that to go away. So if he regains that while keeping the gains he's made with his approach play, that could be pretty fun. He's an amazing ball striker. He avoids bogeys despite being a really bad putter. So how does he grade out for you? I think that's probably why I talked myself into him. I was like, oh, the putting's bad, but like he overcomes it. But like with Sungjae, the putting's good, and he doesn't really need to overcome a lot because he's pretty good elsewhere too. So like I think I've turned and just gone full Sungjae. But what about you?
Yeah, I was trying to. I added a whole lot of columns to my spreadsheet. I was trying to see. So I got Z scores for ball striking in here. I have Zalatoris at a 1.66, Sungjae at a 1.28. That's close enough for me. Where Z scores are just how many deviations you are above like the field. That's close enough whenever you factor in the short game where Sungjae is a 1.16 and Zalatoris is a minus 0.15. Where I'm gonna have a hard time going Zalatoris over Sungjae, but I do have Zalatoris over Fitzpatrick because Fitzpatrick's ball striking is not. That's always the issue with Fitzpatrick. The short game's there, he can grind it out, but he's also like if the irons are really bad, which they can be, like relative to his salary, and he's just not making those putts, you're kind of toast.
Yeah. And that's the concern because again, with Sungjae, you don't have to worry about that. Like the putting will be solid. Well, you get to the extent you can know putting will be solid. It's less of a known negative because it's probably gonna be good for him. So I think that's why I go Sungjae. I feel pretty good putting Zalatoris above Fitzpatrick because the ball striking will be better. But
welcome to the club.
I know. You can give yourself credit for that. It's fine. Fine. I should have been in on Sungjae yesterday and I was a dummy. So Tuesday Jim smarter than Monday Jim. I think that's the conclusion here. Let's go to your second current form guy, Cameron Young. I believe we talked about him last week too, but he's kept it up. He's still golfing really well, still low salary to 91. How about now? I think that we were waiting for a ball striking course to buy in on Cameron Young. And what do you know? We kind of get that here. So what do you see with Cameron Young at $9,100?
That and it's possible not everyone listened to the Honda pod.
Bless your souls if you didn't,
because
you're making good life choices. I'm not, so good for you.
So I figured, hey, why gloss over Cameron Young just because we talked about?
You didn't remember we talked about him last week, did you?
What's that?
You didn't remember we talked about him last week, did you?
I think I thought I actually made a note in here that I did. No, I went back and looked because we had a lot of like Keith Mitchell. I was like,
I talked about him last week.
This is now your podcast.
I gotta plant my flag, bro. We're gonna talk about him here, and I think he's fine. Like, gotta plant my flag. Come on.
I'm just bud.
Get out the paint. Get out the paint.
Look, Cameron Young's golfing really well right now, and his salary is $9,100. Last week he was what? You should know because he's your guy. Come on.
I'm looking it up. Just give me 2 seconds. Please. Like I said, get off me, bro.
We never include salaries on the note sheet.
Wow. I have no idea what his salary
was. Did you look up last week's podcast?
Yeah.
Because you don't put salaries on stuff. That's
I don't need to look up salaries. I have a sheet that tells me salaries. Well, why would I have it on both places? That's just a waste of time.
He was like 10-2, I think, because he was right around. So.
Yeah.
But so now he's 91, but it's not because he played poorly. It's because the field got a lot better. So that's why I think Cameron Young warrants some discussion here. And with these, again, just with the field being what it is, I think it's sort of something to note here. We're getting good golfers at lower salaries than we probably should because it's a good field. And like that makes it a little bit different with roster construction and how you think of things. Anyway, Young has 4 straight top 26 finishes on the PGA Tour, including a 20th at Farmers, 26th at the Waste Management.
Whoa.
T2 at the Genesis, 16th at Honda last week. He's going to gain distance even on this field because he just launches it. It's a very strong head start. He has yet to play Bay Hill, though. It's a tough course with form attainable by invitation. So that holds an edge this week, as I mentioned. But I don't really want to like write off Cameron Young just because he hasn't played here. The issue is, though, like I said, we have other options in this 9,000 range. So I guess maybe talk to me about your guy, and then maybe we'll just try to rank the low 9,000 range. Low to
I can do
mid.
that.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Low to mid.
Okay, I like it.
I don't
So
want Jim
let's
to
talk about
yell
Corey
at me.
Connors. I mentioned before that we're going to talk about Connors in the current form section, not because it's good, but because it's a little rough, I would say. But Connors, good ball striker. So I think we should discuss him here and discuss if the form is concerning enough to push us off. Connors has missed 3 of his past 4 cuts. The one event he did make the cut, he finished 38th. The putting was a disaster in 2 of them, which, yeah. But the approach play has also been a bit more middling in 3 of those events. Connors ranks 5th in the field in strokes gained off the tee the past 50 rounds. He's 33rd in approach despite the recent struggles. But the putting is rough, and the form is not as elite as we're used to with Corey Connors. So I think there's a reason he's a 96. I don't think that reason is enough to push us off of him. I think that Connors is very attractive at 96, but I also think Luke List is pretty good. I think Cameron Young is worthy of discussion. And I love Seamus Power at 95. Can that just be like an assumed thing now? Is Seamus Power in the field? If yes, Jim will like him. Like, we can just do that. But what's your read of this mid to low 9,000 range?
Yeah, it's good. And I have, let me see here. Adjusted for salary, I've got Power number 1. If we look at guys at 96 and below, followed by Luke List, Corey Connors, Bezadenhout, and then Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
Just tons of options here.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a week where you got to whittle things down, and
you can be picky, I think, is the takeaway.
Yeah, that's why like someone like Chris Kirk, who's golfing well, plays well here, might not be as good of a play as some other options who just have better long-term results, because you can't just look at the past 2 weeks and say like this is who this golfer is. So that's why for me long-term form always wins out, and with that Kirk's a little bit lower, but I don't really have any like, I'm not going to tell someone like, hey man, don't play Chris Kirk, because I think he's fine.
Question for you. Over the past 12 months over at Data Golf, their true strokes gained. Who leads the field in true strokes gained off the tee over the past 12 months? It's not a trick question. This one's not a trick question. It's Rahm. Anyway, who's second?
Okay. I was gonna say, I feel like it's Rahm or Rory, but
it's Rahm. Who's second?
Second, Connors.
He's 4th.
List
is, I can't count that high. He's like,
you can switch it to ranks.
I don't want to do that.
Okay. I don't know then.
Cameron MF and Young is number 2 behind.
Yeah,
John Rahm.
I wasn't thinking him because his shot length sample is probably still fairly small.
And this is at Data Golf. And Young is also second the past 6 months behind John Rahm. 3 is Rory McIlroy. Nikolai Højgaard is 4th. Then Sergio Garcia, Keith Mitchell, Victor Hovland, Sungjae, List, Connors, et cetera. So like, if we're bumping up the value of off the tee play in general, kind of feel like we should probably be pretty in on Cameron Young. Do I rank him above List? Probably not, because List's approach play is a lot better, and I think that matters a lot. But like, Young is a good putter too, so he can bomb and putt, and you can get that for 91. He's not bad on approach. I think that's pretty fun. So I don't know. Like, I'm kind of in,
Oh, okay, so I'm not saying any of this to speak ill of Cameron Young, who I think has a very bright future and is very much in play. His shot length sample is 30 rounds over the past 6 months, and yes, he is second off the tee in that span. He's basically average with the approach, and I don't want to say that he's a good putter based on just 30 rounds. Very possible he is, but I think that you give me man, now I'm second guessing stuff, but I still have Cameron Young ranked a little bit lower
than who?
Like this tier in general.
Okay. What about him versus Kirk?
Kirk by a hair.
Okay. Do you want to do a bet?
Well, if I say that, then Chris Kirk's going to miss the cut because I don't win these. But I'll take it for the fun of the show.
So you have Chris Kirk FanDuel points versus my Cameron Young FanDuel points. I'm giving you $200 edge here too, because it's the salary's lower on Young.
Is it?
Yeah, so
I
you're
didn't
getting
know
a
this.
little edge here. So just so you know.
Let's see if Jim can win the 6 straight
Is it really?
bet. Yeah.
Wow. Don't talk about the bobble hat last week. I'm pretty sure I lost that by like 100. So let's not talk about that.
It's crazy how my success in the head-to-heads is so bad.
Does not translate to other aspects. Yeah. We don't do anything for the head-to-heads either. So that's a true delight. I think the overall, though, my impression is that this range is good and I'm okay living in it more than I usually am. Would you agree with that sentiment?
Yeah, I know we're spending a lot of time on this, but I think like you could build a lineup. Again, I threw in a Ron Mitchell Homa start, and I have 9,200 left for every golfer. You might not have to dig below 8,000 because we talk about win upside, win juice all the time. You're not getting a whole lot of that. Even from these guys, sure, but the lower you go into the 8,000 range, like you just don't really have a whole lot of win equity expectation from these guys, because the past winners here who were in the field, Bryson won last year, but he withdrew. Tyrrell Hatton, Rory, Mark Leishman, Jason Day, Martin Laird back in 2011. So but the guys who win here are good. And if you're banking on 2 to 3 true value plays, you're going to have a hard time getting access to a lot of ceiling points.
Yeah. I think that is probably the way I'd want to lean. I will say though that like you can do a Raw McIlroy lineup, and like you can go below 9,000. You never have to go below 8,700 to fill out a good lineup. So
right,
I'm into that.
9,000 is a soft cutoff. It's more 87.
Yeah.
It's.
I don't see a lot of value below $8,700 this week, personally.
Correct.
And I think that's where I kind of want to live as far as like my lower. So I think that's it's a good range this week, better than usual is the way I'd phrase it. Like last week, I wanted to actively avoid that tier. This week, I'm going to live in it, I think, quite a bit for sure. Let's dive into the bookmaker odds for this week based on the odds of FanDuel Sportsbook. John Rahm, the clear favorite of FanDuel. He is plus 850. Rory McIlroy 13-1 with Victor Hovland at 15-1. Scotty Scheffler is 19-1. Hideki Matsuyama 21-1. Then there is a tier fall off down to Sungjae Im, Matt Fitzpatrick, and Will Zalatoris. They are all 29-1. Tyrrell Hatton and Adam Scott are both 32-1, with Mark Leishman and Paul Casey rounding at the top group at 36-1. So I think we're saying use Rahm or McIlroy in most lineups, correct? Is that a fair assertion? Okay. Yeah. Where do you go for number 2? What is your preferred one between the Sungjae /Zalatoris /Fitzpatrick or dipping down to the 10,000 range? If you had to pick one for a single entry tournament lineup, where are you going?
As much as I hate to do it to my guy Sungjae, I think getting access to more of the that's a coin flip.
It's very.
I'm gonna say
Sungjae.
I'm gonna say Sungjae and the 9,000s. That's a band name.
Sungjae in the 9,000s.
Yeah,
love it. I think I'm there too, and I think that
Rahm in the 10Ks in the Battle of the Bands.
Yeah,
Jump maybe Johnny in the 10Ks.
No, Rahm's baked in. Rahm's the lead singer. It's just more about the background voices. Like, do you want to go with Sungjae as a background voice or Keith Mitchell and Sam Burns? Oh, yeah, for tournaments, yeah, Burns is fine. But I think that's kind of the discussion here because like Rahm's an assumption. So
okay, then I think because we talked so much about the 9,000 range and I really started to like tons of names down there, I would go with Rahm, Sungjae, and then round it out with the 9,000 range.
I think that's where I'm at too, is my preferred route, because I do think there's a gap between Sungjae and Burns and Mitchell, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. That's the main thing for me. I'm okay paying for that gap too.
Yeah.
Good. Look at you coming around. If you look at the odds for this week, they've shifted a lot. So basically FanDuel opened things pretty short on a lot of guys. I'm assuming didn't get a lot of action because they were short and then bumped things out. So if you look at the odds, everyone is lengthened since yesterday. Maybe a couple of exceptions, and I think those might be more noteworthy because it means they probably got action at the shorter number. So who shortened yesterday that was noteworthy to you?
Okay, so I re-pulled everything after Bryson withdrew. Paul Casey was 41-1 on FanDuel Sportsbook. He's now 36. Again, that's a name that I threw out there. Someone who popped in my model, but I just kind of had fatigue here and didn't get quite there myself. But then Carlos Ortiz and Sebastian Munoz went from 100 to 90. That is all I see who have shortened. So again, indicates some people getting some action on those guys. As for, do you have something to say?
I was curious, like, I like Ortiz and Munoz in general. I was not super drawn towards them this week. Did you have a different sentiment on them? Because I guess I was kind of surprised to see them be the guys shortening.
No, I didn't. They didn't really jump off the page for me.
Okay.
In that range, I have like Tom Hoagie and Carlos Ortiz are the same salary. I have Tom Hoagie ranked well above him.
I do too.
And then Munoz at 85, I think, is probably behind Aaron Wise again at 86. So like if I was in that range, I'd go Aaron Wise. But no, they didn't really stand out to me either.
Aaron Wise and Sam Burns just really don't like me, which is fine. I don't blame them, but it's been a rough month plus.
Yeah. Some of the larger lengthening options have been Rory from 10-1 to 13-1. Rory, I think, was aggressively priced at 10-1. So that's one of the bigger moves there. Mark Leishman from 29 to 36 was also kind of more noteworthy than others. Virtually everyone who opened up at 50 is now 55. Same for 60 to 65. But Sepp Straka, probably not a whole lot of biting there from 70-1 to 90-1. So I think that if you're on the Sepp Straka train, you might not be as chalky after his win as maybe you would think. But
we saw that with Neiman last week too. So I feel like it could be a situation where people assume they'll be chalky and then don't use them as a result. Maybe. Or maybe they just get their salaries jacked up too much to the point where they're not as good of a play. I don't know.
I think it's possible. Of course.
I don't know if people are that galaxy brains. Maybe it is about the salaries more so than like, oh, they'll be chalky, so I won't use them.
Well, I mean, Neiman was not even like, he was just another guy in the top range last week.
Yeah,
like
he
same
was
as
like if you're looking at him relative to them on like a long-term perspective, he was not in the same tier as the other guys who were up there.
Yeah, I think that one was less egregious. I did see some early victory lapping for like people saying, hey, people faded Neiman because he won last week, and then I mean he didn't make the cut. So like but like, you know, I'm not just
oops.
Look,
I was more so saying like on the broad perspective of like, you know,
yeah,
we always assume people who are coming off a win will be very popular. That's not always the case.
Sure. And I think you have to add in context here. Sepp Straka is not going to be the chalk in a field this good.
Why not? You know, I think he's a standout. He won last week. Trophies, bro. The will to win. Sepp Straka's got it. Which lower salary golfers have odds to stand out to you?
Not the best week, really, if this is part of your process. But if you look at golfers with salaries of 9,000 or lower, the best odds belong to Thomas Peters, Eric Van Rooyen, Lonto Griffin. They're all 75-1. And then Sepp Straka, Siwoo Kim, Tom Hoagie, Carlos Ortiz, and Sebastian Munoz are 90-1. Everyone else is at least 120-1 as of now.
Anyone stand out to you in that regard?
Thomas Peters. Lonto's I'm cool with. Hoagie I like a lot as well.
Yeah, I think those are the three for me. I have them ranked differently where I'd go with Lonto and Hoagie above Peters, but I think overall
I was just reading down the list.
Oh, well, never mind then. Weather for this week actually is noteworthy, so we'll spend a tiny bit more time on this for this week. Thursday, wind speeds don't jack up until around 6 p.m., which means the rounds are probably over by then or getting close to it. So I wouldn't worry about wind speeds on Thursday. But on Friday, winds ramp up throughout the day. They'll be above 10 miles per hour for the entire afternoon wave after being like below 5 for the early wave there. So I think there's actually a pretty decent edge for golfers who tee off in the morning on Friday / afternoon Thursday. I might not go so far as to like stack that, but I do think that it will actually influence golfers who are close to me. So like, let's take the Peters, Hoagie, and Lonto tier as an example. Thomas Peters to me is third of that group. If Peters winds up teeing off afternoon Thursday, whereas those guys are in the morning Thursday, have to deal with the heavier winds Friday, I'd probably bump Peters up above them. I think it's actually where, like, if they're in the same tier, I'm okay making that adjustment based on that. Same thing goes for like Zalatoris versus Sungjae. If Sungjae breaks my heart and draws like a morning Thursday thing, whereas Zalatoris is afternoon, I'm okay. I'm okay pivoting to Zalatoris then. So I actually do think for me, it will be a factor in my analysis. The leaders on Saturday and Sunday be playing in pretty heavy winds, 15 miles per hour from noon on, both Saturday and Sunday. So wind will be a factor. Don't think you have to do wind splits. You could, though. I think that it's more valid than usual. But I think the bigger implication is that scores are going to be in check, similar to what they were the past few years, where we're not going to see someone go 15 under. I wouldn't think. Maybe Rahm or Rory could, but like I don't think we're going to see 15 under here. So scoring should be suppressed a little bit. And I think there is a bump up for guys teeing off in the afternoon Thursday because they get the less wind on Friday. Are you okay with making adjustments that are, for us at least, pretty major for weather this week?
Yeah, I like it. Makes sense to me. The one thing that actually jumped out, as you mentioned, the leaders playing in heavier winds on the weekend. Maybe some live betting opportunities there for some guys who golf a little bit earlier.
Okay, I can see that for sure. So yeah, I think that's something to keep in mind. Also, if you're doing like single round stuff for Friday, you need to keep tee times in mind for that, because the guys teeing off later Thursday or later Friday for the single round contests gonna be a thing there. I might actually play those. I have not played those in a very long time. I haven't been bored enough to play those in a long time. Maybe I will this week. We'll see. Anyway, let's move into our player picks here for the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Brandon, who are you checking on in the upper range on FanDuel for this week?
I feel kind of fraudulent here by saying Rory, because I think Rahm's the much better play, but I do think that there's Rory is a tier above everyone other than Rahm, so I think it's at least worth noting. I mentioned like the form at Bay Hill, the current form is good. He's such a good ball striker. The putting's trending up. For 11-9, I think there's a lot of justification to have Rory in your lineups, and I honestly like him enough where even though my win simulations don't say to do this, where I could maybe build a lineup with Rahm and duplicate it and just sub in Rory. Eat the 200 in salary and just keep everything else the same, because if you've played DFS for PGA enough, you know how hard it is to hit the right combos. So that's not to say how can I reshuffle this to use that extra 200. It's just honestly swapping out Rahm for Rory.
Yeah, I think that I'm into that for sure. I do the combo switches and stuff like that, and it works. Sometimes you can stumble into the right combination. So I think that Rory does make a lot of sense. I will say a Rory Rahm lineup will be in my player pool for this week. I think you can make it work without hating yourself. So I'll be doing that for sure. My high salary guy is John Rahm.
That's a bold assumption.
Without hating yourself for that reason. So I'll make it more broad. There you go. You're welcome. I think that for cash games, it's Rahm. And I think for tournaments, it's also Rahm for me, just because I think that he'll be less popular than he should be. He leads the field in strokes gained off the tee and bogey avoidance the past 50 rounds, which is a pretty fun combination. He's also fifth in approach. And like, sure, the results have not been what you paid for from a salary perspective this year, but also they haven't been bad. Like 21st isn't bad. It's bad for his salary, but it's not bad. And like, dude can still crush. So I think that we're not going to get Rahm at reduced popularity very often. We might get it this week based on, some fatigue. I'll take advantage and go with him there. Who else do you like in this upper range?
Sungjae in the 9,000s this week. The thing I like about this podcast is we do it early in the week and we only have salaries for so long. And like, it's really talking through the process and how we think about building our DFS lineups. And that I think is it's a lot of value for me to talk about this for so long. Yeah. But Sungjae in that 9,000 range with Rahm is going to be my head-to-head lineup against you. I can just say that much for sure. I know. Sorry, buddy.
I've already got mine done, so you can do whatever you want. It's fine.
I think like there's a chance he's a little bit more forgotten than some of these other names, especially if Matt Fitzpatrick is as chalky as.
Shockley.
Come on, man! I was trying, do my best here. But Sung Jae is in the 91st percentile in ball striking in my model, but also the 87th percentile in short game. I talked about the Z scores being good there too. And he's one of only 5 with a salary of at least 10,000 to rank 85th percentile in both ball striking and short game. Very good, has good form here. Third, 21st at Bay Hill. I'm on Sung Jae this week.
Yeah, I initially had Zalatoris here, and I can't justify, given how much I've talked about Sung Jae doing that. So, my second player pick will be Sung Jae. I agree, where, the 4v4 at best for our head-to-head this week, because I'm going to put Sung Jae in there as well. Just, the stability you get with his putting without sacrificing ball striking, that's really hard to give up. Whereas the alternative is Zalatoris, where it's not a known that the putting will be negative, but it's pretty darn close. So I think that for me, it's hard to go Zalatoris above Sung Jae. Again, if Sung Jae gets a bad draw, or if I get the read that Zalatoris will be a lot less popular, then sure, I'll go there. But I'd need those factors to be in play. And I also don't think Zalatoris will be less popular based on early vibes. And like you said, a little bit of Sung Jae fatigue for people too. So Sung Jae is my number 2 player pick as well for this week. Let's move now to the mid-range, a good mid-range. Who you got there?
I'm not going away from Corey Connors just yet. If we care less about putting this week, so we can emphasize ball striking, Connors just makes a lot of sense, even with the small sample being not great with the irons. Over the past year, he's in the 92nd percentile in adjusted ball striking. It's a better sample to use than the past few weeks. I'm not saying that this will just spike back into an overcorrection, but again, it's better to use a larger sample for stats like that. And he also, he's going to find fairways when he needs to. He's going to gain some distance when he can. Was third here last year. I think that Connors probably goes mostly overlooked too, because of we like the upper, or the lower 10,000 range. We like the lower 9,000 range. Connor's probably not going to draw a whole lot of attention with his current form being what it looks like.
Would you go there in cash games, or would you pivot elsewhere because of the struggles?
I don't worry about the struggles. It's more of I might just realistically be in the 9,000, 91, 93 tier for because cash game for me is one lineup. So
yeah. Yep. I agree. I think that I would also not quite be getting back up there. Staring at my lineup right now, not quite getting back up there, but I might get to Seamus Power at $9,500, $100 lower than him. Power coming off back-to-back missed cuts, but it was on the tail end of a pretty grueling schedule for him. I mean, it could be because the Pebble Beach stuff could be lingering mentally, but he was off last week, so it's possible that Power will bounce back this week. He also wasn't terrible in the 2 missed cuts. He putted poorly at the Waste Management. Sorry, the WMPO. He had issues around the green at the Genesis, but the ball striking was still solid in both those. Power ranks 48th off the tee, 24th in approach, and 5th in bogey avoidance. He's also good Bermuda putter. So if I can de-emphasize chipping, I'll happily buy into Power here at just $9,500. And I like him a lot. I think that he's not a necessity for cash games, but he is close to it, I would say. $9,500. What's your read on Seamus this week?
Like him. Probably not my number 1 in this range, but I'm now starting to have a hard time ranking them exactly.
Give me Seamus versus Connors. Do it. Okay. Give me $200 with Kirk versus Young, and I give you another 100 here with Seamus versus Connors.
So generous.
Yeah, that's 300, bro. That's
at the WM.
I'm betting against markets here. Markets are efficient in general. I'm being a dummy for your benefit. You should take advantage of me.
Speaking of the WM, I had Hideki against Cantlay, so I think we have a ways to go yet before that one balances out.
Yeah. Are you gonna bet me or no?
Yeah, I said I will.
Woo! Okay, cool. I'll take it. I'm excited. I just love my boy Seamus. Okay, who else do you like in this mid range?
Luke List. We both like Luke List. the same case I made for Connors can be made for List. 90th percentile adjusted ball striking, 80th percentile around the green. He just doesn't putt well. And the stats say that putting here is not that hard. And that's kind of been reflected in List's results here: 17th, 7th, 10th, and 63rd in 4 tries.
Yeah, I like List too. He's my second guy down here as well. $9,200 for a guy with his ball striking is really hard to turn down. And like, yeah, the putting's bad, and I have bogey avoidance on my list for this week, but he's actually pretty good there. He's 25th in bogey avoidance because everything else is so good. He just kind of puts himself in position for birdies and may not convert all the time, but like he doesn't bomb a whole lot. He's 10th in strokes gained off the tee, 15th in approach. We've seen him, like you said, put that to good use here with the good finishes. So it's pretty hard to duplicate all that stuff with Luke List for 92, and I am okay, despite the putting, with him for a cash game for this week. Let's move down to the value range. Who stands out to you at $9,000 and below?
Thomas Peters right at 9,000. He nukes it off the tee, and I think that's relevant for this week. He's got the best long-term form by a comfortable margin in this salary range for me. Trending back up as well, despite a missed cut at the Genesis. I won in Abu Dhabi in 2022. 12th at Dubai, 24th in Saudi Arabia. He's got results here back in 2016, 2017 that won't impress you, but I'm willing to rule those out.
Yeah, I think Peters works really well. I think that he's one of 3 guys I like down here. The other ones being Lonto, Griffin, and Tom Hoagie. I'll talk about Griffin here. Lonto, $8,800 feels pretty low for a guy with his skills. And like the off the tee play isn't very good. He's 74th there, but 36th in approach, 18th in Bermuda putting, 7th in bogey avoidance. That has helped him make 8 straight cuts. Lonto has 3 top 10s in that stretch. And like the off the tee play has been better recently, not making it being good. He's not losing as much there as he was at the end of the summer. So I think that's a positive. I think there's a lot to like here at $8,800. And I actually would probably go Lonto above Hoagie if forced to choose in this range. So give me the case for Hoagie above Lonto for your second player pick here.
So for me, it's volatility. It's sort of upside for Hoagie. I'm really willing to roll the dice. He's been cut second, cut 1, 14th, and cut. So basically all good or all bad. He's been more good than bad at Bay Hill as well. 26th, 15th, and cut last year, which came with poor putting. I love Lonto, but give me the volatility at least with Hoagie for the potential for a top 10 in a tough field.
Yeah, we talk about volatility. Like I think it has a negative connotation, but like in DFS for tournaments, it has a very positive connotation if it means you have the ability to hit the high ends, and Hoagie has shown that he can, like repeatedly past couple of times.
The only non-volatile golfer is basically Jon Rahm.
Yes. And well, I mean, I'm talking about it in a different sense, but like, I mean that like upside, I guess, in this sense, Hoagie has that in a very good way. So I think the Hoagie, he's also my second player pick. So it's just a hair below Lonto, but like, I think he grades out well. 16th in approach, 16th in bogey avoidance, 69th off the tee. Missed a cut at the Genesis, but like it was all tied to short game. So he actually gained a smidge both off the tee and an approach. So I think the Hoagie makes a lot of sense too. I am not opposed to having both Hoagie and Griffin in a cash game lineup. I do not have that right now, but I'm not opposed to it. It is 2 guys with a little bit lower salaries, but I think they're both under salaried. I think that's why I'm okay with dipping down there. So both Hoagie and Griffin standouts to me in the value range for this week. Let's finish up with our player picks based on the win odds over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Brandon, I have to recover mentally after the missed win for Shane Lowry last week, and kind of want to go Jon Rahm at plus 850. I kind of want to do it. I think I'm going to do it. Let's do Jon Rahm at plus 850 for me, for one of mine.
Yeah, I mean, not the best betting value finds for me this week. Rahm actually is a little bit of a value now that he's at plus 850. Everyone else is like overvalued. I'm going to go Sung Jae at 29 though.
Okay.
Because if, again, the past winners here are generally the studs, and I don't want to get into too many long shots just because we had Straka win last week. Very different to me. And then I might pull a Jim with my second pick.
Wait, can I guess?
Sure.
So you're picking someone we have not talked about on the podcast yet, is what you're doing. That's what you're
not necessarily not talked about, but like just we're not that interested in DFS. But I think they're
okay. I actually don't know. Just kidding.
Scotty Scheffler at 19-1.
We're
getting better. We're getting better odds on him than most. But the salary is a bit too high for me. And if we want ball striking, like, I'll take that.
Okay. I don't think I'm gonna make this person my win pick, but why is Tommy Fleetwood 55-1? That feels pretty long.
I'm gonna reserve my take on that one.
What?
I like Tommy, but I think that's a fair number.
Okay, well.
I mean, like Jason Day's 55, Gary Woodland, Taylor Gooch. I think that's justifiable there.
Oh no. Oh no. Am I about to do something that I regret? Probably.
I'd go Henley or Sergio at 55 if I had to pick someone.
No.
I also considered Sam Burns at 47, or 46, but I can't quite get there myself. That's the one you're thinking of.
That's what I'm gonna regret, baby. Sam Burns, 46-1. I think we wouldn't be if he makes the cut and finishes 50th, it's just like objectively not a good event in the most recent 3 events. What are his odds? Like, is he 32 with Hatton and Scott at that point, or like 36 like Paul Casey?
Oh, you're saying if he was
like if he makes the cut but finishes poorly in those 3 events where he does the cut, like what are his odds?
He would probably be like 37 with Horschel or something.
Yeah. So give me 46. I've got Sam Burns and John Rahm this week. You have Sungjae and Victor Hovland, correct?
No, Scotty Scheffler.
Oh, I was like, Hovland's 15. You said 19. I was very confused. Okay, Scotty Scheffler. Okay, so you're going with the studs. I'm going with a stud and John Rahm for this week as my win picks. That is all that we have here for the Arnold Palmer Invitational podcast. Brandon, any final words for you to the good people before they go off to fill out their lineups for this week?
Check the weather and tee times, and then also be willing to give more credence to the guys you're not hearing a lot of buzz about if you think that they're not that far away from the guys you're hearing talked about a lot this week.
And let's get John Rahm a win to make me happy for this week. That is all that we have here for today on the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast. But as mentioned, we have NBA, NHL, UFC, and NASCAR podcasts coming at you all throughout the week here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. So go find that wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter, where can they find you there?
I'm at Gadula13, GDULA13.
So helpful. I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcasts. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your PGA DFS lineups. We'll talk to you once again next week. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire.